With that,
let's start with the topic for today, which is land and the role of land in regenerative agriculture. And I guess I should start by saying that it's sort of a funny concept to even be talking about, because it seems like obvious or like self-evident that land and agriculture should be like the like inextricable link, like they should be like one and the same. But but it's like agriculture has gotten to this point where there's this disconnect between the land and the ecology of a given place and the like agriculture or production that's being done on that land. And so a lot of what regenerative agriculture in general, regardless of whether it's livestock or not, what it sort of the goal is to be harnessing those natural cycles and natural processes to your benefit, so that you're actually healing that land and raising products and making a living off of it. So I guess we'll sort of just talk about the fact that from our perspective, we're talking about like grazing operations and stuff like that. Like really what you want to be concentrating on is a concept of like ecological literacy, some people call it, which is where you're familiar enough with the processes and ecosystem services that are going on at a given location that you understand feedback that the land is telling you. Like, are you overstocked? Are you overgrazing? Is there a drought coming on? Like what the different plant species are indicating about your soil, like that kind of stuff. It would all be under the umbrella of ecological literacy. And so really, like in order to, like really, I guess what I wanted to talk about is the fact that, so it's really easy to like paint, like industrial agriculture as a scale, like a really easy target for like agriculture being disconnected from the land and from like natural processes, because like big crop farmers are just nuking the soil with like herbicides and pesticides, and then just planting whatever the heck you want, like planting alfalfa in the middle of the desert in Arizona.
Very mechanical mindset.
Yeah.
All plug and chug, and just it's all machine. You just plug inputs.
As long as I got enough chemicals or enough fertilizers or enough machinery, I can make any crop, any livestock work in any situation. As long as
the human brain. We're so intelligent we can make it work where it shouldn't work.
And so that's like the easy target as far as like disconnect from nature and disconnect from ecological services. But like the other thing that I don't think is talked a lot about is on small scale agriculture, especially in the organic, regenerative, sustainable, whatever you want to call it, like space, there's still a level of disconnect where people will get this idea in their head. They have the best intentions, but they get this idea in their head like, oh, I want to run cattle like Greg Judy. And so they're like start to go out and try to buy South Poles. They're starting to they want to stock to whatever it is, two acres per animal, like that kind of stuff. When in reality, like their environment in their market would best suit. But that's a different topic. But we're just talking about land here. Their environment would be best suited for goats or for sheep or something like that. And because they're so zeroed in on like this is what I really want to be doing, they're not paying attention to any of the signs and signals that piece of land is telling them when they've started stocking it with cattle, for example, when it really is best suited for something else. So
a good example of that is probably one of the most common questions that we get asked is, and I'm just giving an example. Oh, I've got 40 acres. How many cows can I run? And when you think of like, there's so many different variables in that. Like how dry is your land? Are you in Arizona? Are you in Washington State? Are you in all these different places? What kind of grasses are you growing? What kind of stocking rate does your county have, like on an average? Mm-hmm. What kind of cattle you run? Are you running 2,000 pound big old Charolais cows, or are you running little Dexters? I mean, there's just so much that goes into it that it's very location dependent and enterprise dependent or whatever. So
I guess like really the important step, like next step to this whole thing is, okay, that's all well and good. Like, I understand the fact that I need to be paying attention to what the land is telling me, but what does that even mean? And like, how do you go about deciphering that, and how do you go about making sure you're not just trying to like shove a square peg into a round hole type deal. And like it's something that I really want to focus on with this live stream and the stuff that I put out in general is the fact that there's a lot, especially in agriculture, but in any field, there's a lot of theory that gets bounced around and a lot of like conceptual ideas of how things should be done, or and a lot of that stuff is great, and it's really good to sort of like spur your creative mind and think about things a little bit differently. But there's a lot of the time very little focus put on like, okay, the concept of ecological literacy makes sense, but how do I actually use that, daily in my operation, right? So that implementation step is something that I really want to make sure we try to get across and focus on whenever we talk about things like this, which are sort of more like not as concrete. They're more philosophical, heady, whatever you want to talk, however you want to call it. So if I was starting on a new piece of land, or I'd never farmed before or ran livestock or anything before, like what would I do to make sure that I'm like paying attention to the ecological literacy piece of this? And I would say you want to try to find people operating in an environment similar to yours. They don't necessarily need to be like right next door to you, although that would be super helpful, but somewhere with a similar climate. So if I was in Tennessee, like, Greg's stuff would probably be pretty applicable.
Or maybe you find someone in Tennessee.
Maybe you find someone in Tennessee who's doing it. That'd be even better. But what you want to do is just find something that's as close as you can get to what you're going to be dealing with, and learn and look at their operation and try to learn from them about like things that they're paying attention to, grass species that they're really keyed in on, like, what the sort of like natural history is of the given land that you're on, what the actual history is of the land that you're on. Was it used for, cropping? Was it plowed back in the 30s? Was it just, forested? Has it been desert since, 1860? You know what I mean? Like you just have all of that information is relevant and important. And so you want to be looking at people nearby, seeing what they're doing. If they're doing regenerative stuff, even better. But you could even be looking at people who are just like running livestock conventionally, and you still could learn a little bit from them, like what kind of water system.
Learn a lot from them.
What kind of water systems are they using?
What kind of grasses are they grazing?
Even if they're not doing it right, like it's still like there's a lot of like cattlemen and ranchers out there that
how are they handling their livestock? There's a lot of things in, like, it doesn't even have to be with cattle. It's any kind of, like, agriculture operation, whether if you're doing, if you're trying to do like cover crops, you can go to a crop farmer and learn a lot, like just tractor handling skills, or when to plant this certain species. Even if they are spraying Roundup and you're against that, you're still going to learn things that you can take and apply with what you want to do.
So that would be sort of the implementation piece of this whole thing is find an adaptable model, so to speak. Find somebody it would be ideal if that adaptable model was as close to you as it could be. But if not, just understand that the farther away environmentally that you get from your location. So if you're in Arizona and Greg is in like central Missouri, there's going to be a larger amount, I should say, of adaptation that needs to happen. Like there's going to be some concepts and principles and stuff that will be universal, but there's also going to be a lot of little things that are going to be completely different from a management perspective.
Another huge resource that I don't think is taken advantage of as often as it could is the NRCS. There is just boatloads of information on, grass species in your area, or, stocking rates, or water systems, and maybe, I'm not telling you, go run into the NRCS, get a cost share program or whatever, but like the guys that work there, they know what they're doing. I went at that grazing conference, or the beef roundup table that I went to with Greg. Chris Peterson was there. He worked for the NRCS. He was a forage specialist, and that guy knows his stuff, and he knows,
Is it Chris or Doug?
Doug, did I say Chris?
I said Chris.
Sorry, Doug Peterson, sorry. And he knows his stuff, and he knows grasses and what to plant if you're if you're looking at planting something, or what how like grasses perform in different environments, like just the amount of people working there that have like that knowledge. It's just like a huge resource that you can tap into. So that's just definitely something to think about.
And really, at the end of the day, it's like a plan, like execute, evaluate, and then readjust your plan. Like that's really what you should be constantly doing with every bit of management that you're using on your farm, because it's the management that we do in the summertime is different from the management that we do in the fall, is different from the management that we do in the winter. And so like the only way that you can figure out the best sort of secret sauce for your environment is to take the best known practices, the best information that you can, and then use it, but then always have an open eye for this is working, this isn't working, maybe we should try this, and not be afraid to try some things differently. And if you pay attention and you take notes and record results and readjust, you'll get there. Like every environment's got their own little quirks, but I mean, there's living things everywhere. So
everything has their disadvantages, but everything has their advantages as well. So
it's focusing on those advantages and working around the disadvantages is really the bottom line. So yeah, that's what makes it exciting. Like it's a dynamic business. Like there's no cookie cutter anything about it. And it's what's frustrating, and it's what prevents it from becoming like mass scale industrialized, but
maybe that's a good thing.
Maybe that's a good thing, but it's I mean, we would argue it's the way things should be, but it's just more complicated and nuanced, just like the natural world is. There's just so much diversity and so much complexity to it. If you're really keying in on that and utilizing it to your advantage, whatever you come up with is going to be diverse and complex. Also.
And it's gonna fit you as a person
too. That's the other piece. I mean, we're just focusing on land, but like that, it also applies to like your own personal life and like your work-life balance and what makes you happy, and also applies to your business and your marketing and what products you're actually selling and how you're selling them, and that kind of evaluation and readjusting and stuff should be taking place in all those areas. But those are for other live streams.
Yes.
So